I have always been civil with my half-brother. We were close as kids, but he started to have an attitude at 13 and pretty much stopped being nice, and started messing with my things / making fun of me and doing pranks to annoy me / privacy, was gone with him coming into my room and taking my things. Whenever I complained, my stepmom would normalize his behavior and make excuses. My dad never really grounded him and thought that talking to him will get him to behave better. I'm currently in college. I live in a rented apartment and have car to help me get to the university or other places. The car isn't expensive or fancy at all. I saved up for it 2 years ago. I decided to have Christmas dinner with my family. It's the perfect opportunity to be with family since I haven't seen my dad in a while. I arrived at my dad's house and left my purse and my keys on the kitchen island after my stepmom told me to help with dinner. My half-brother started talking about my car in the kitchen while my stepmom was listening and asked if he could take it for a couple of hours to hang out with friends. I politely told him no. He threw a fit and brought up how I needed to relax and not worry, but my answer was still the same. While we were sitting at the dinner table, my half-brother got up, washed his hands, and I thought he went outside. I got busy talking to my dad, and after I got up to wash my hands, I noticed my car keys weren't there. I went outside to ask him, and neither he nor my car were there. I lost it. I started calling his phone, but he hung up on me several times. I was furious. I told my dad I'd call the police if he didn't come back with the car. My stepmom jumped to defend him and said I was being unreasonable to call the police. I called him one last time, then I called the police. My stepmom freaked out when my half-brother got picked up by the police. She told me to go explain the situation to the authorities, otherwise he'd spend the night in jail. But I refused, especially since I still hadn't got my car back. Stepmom yelled that I ruined dinner and that it was no big deal. He was going to return it after borrowing it from me, but he didn't really borrow it, and she heard me say no. I don't know what she told the police, but I didn't give permission to use the car. My stepmom's side of family are mad at me for doing this to my brother and hinted that I don't consider him family. My dad's side of family sided with me, saying he deserved it. My dad said I overreacted and I shouldn't have called the police when he disappeared for 4 hours. I talked to the police about what happened, and I learned later that my stepmom said that her son was allowed to borrow it, and that it was a misunderstanding. I wasn't going to let her continue to lie, but my dad told me to back off and let it go. This really upset me. My half-brother wasn't even berated the way I was by the family. I'm a 19-year-old F with 6 older siblings. My parents spent most of my childhood spending money they didn't have on my siblings, so by the time I hit my teenage years, I realized I was probably going to have to fend for myself financially when I turn 18. I started babysitting and doing odd jobs around my neighborhood when I was 14, and eventually got part-time jobs during the school year. By the time I was 16, I was working 3 jobs in the summer and 2 in addition to school. When my parents told me they couldn't pay for college, I'd already earned enough, along with scholarships, to be able to put myself through college and have plenty left over. I've continued to work during the school year, and have been able to make money during quarantine by tutoring online. The issue began a few months ago, when my eldest sister got married. My parents spent $30 grand on her wedding, taking out a second mortgage to do so. To make matters worse, my dad was furloughed 6 days after the wedding. They'd effectively dug themselves into a hole they couldn't get out of. 2 weeks ago, my mom texted me for the first time since the wedding. She didn't say hi, ask how I was, or make any small talk. She just said, "Your dad and I need a favor. When can we call you?" I'd expected this. None of my elder siblings are doing well financially, and they've exhausted all other loan options, both from family and the bank. I figured they would text me, ask me to loan them a few thousand, and promise to pay it back when they could figure things out. I was absolutely willing to pitch in a few thousand, and had even considered giving them some of my tutoring jobs so they could make some extra cash. I was not, however, expecting them to demand I give them all the money, close to $40,000. I'd made from the ages of 14 to 18. The exact statement my mom had made was, "You made that money under our roof. We were the ones who allowed you to work, so you only have it because of us anyway. We bought you food and clothes for 18 years. That money is only a fraction of what you owe us," and so on. I said that food, clothes, and shelter were the very minimum. It's what they signed up for when they chose to become parents. I didn't ask for any of it, etc. They responded by telling me that if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have the life I have today. I said they were being ridiculous, and hung up. Since that day, both, along with 2 of my siblings, have continuously hounded me about giving them what is rightfully theirs. My siblings, who have never been asked to give them money, are still professing that it's my job as their kid to take care of them. I told them they wouldn't see a cent of my hard-earned money, and have no right to make such a request. I'm torn. I feel awful for refusing to help them out, but on the other hand, this was their fault. I feel I shouldn't be responsible for fixing their mess. Since my wife and I got married 3 years ago, things have been off. I know that people grow and change with time, but around our wedding, my wife changed drastically. She bleached her dark brown hair blonde right before the ceremony. And I honestly thought I was in the wrong church for a split second when she came down the aisle. We moved into our house right after the honeymoon, and she went into full domestic mode. We'd shared cleaning duties before, but once we moved into the house, she became insistent on doing everything before I could even get to it. Since this is our first house, I thought it was some kind of homeowner nesting thing, but it never stopped. Her hair color is none of my business, and I think most people would be happy not to have to clean. So I honestly didn't really think much of either of those things at the time. The big thing has always been how closed off she got after the wedding. When we were dating, she'd tell me long rambling stories about her feelings and rant to me when she was upset and all that. And I liked hearing about what was going on inside her head. After the wedding, that stopped pretty abruptly. If I ask her how her day is, she will only ever tell me that it was fine or super. She doesn't talk to me about her feelings anymore, ever, even when I explicitly ask, "How do you feel about X?" She also stopped telling me about anything important that happened to her. About a year after we got married, her grandfather died. Did she tell me she'd lost her grandfather? No. She told me that she had to go to a conference for work on the other side of the country, which I thought nothing of. On the second day she was gone. Her older brother texted me to tell me that my in-laws had really missed seeing me at the funeral. When I called her to ask why in the ever-loving hell she didn't tell me, and then lied about it, all she would say was, "I didn't want to trouble you. You have a lot on your plate." After that, she went on a couple of spontaneous family trips. She's really close to her family, so the first time she said she was going camping with her brother at their alma mater. I didn't think a lot of it other than to be slightly disappointed and confused that I wasn't invited, because her brother's cool and the 3 of us go camping together a lot. But the second time, I started hearing alarm bells. I'd like to say I'm a more secure man, but after the second spontaneous family trip, my wheels started spinning and I started to think that maybe she was cheating. This was a weird insecurity in the back of my mind for a while, since she wasn't showing any other big signs of cheating. She wasn't guarded about her phone and hadn't changed her routine / appearance. A few weeks ago, she told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon about it until I asked her how many weeks along she was, and she nonchalantly said about 12 or 13. She'd been pregnant for like 3 months before she even bothered to tell me. She's not really showing at all, and she doesn't usually drink, so I had been completely in the bloody dark. I honestly hadn't even suspected. That was kind of it for me. I was sure she was cheating, and that it wasn't my kid. I thought there was no possible way that a woman would keep her pregnancy a secret from her husband for 3 months. So I snooped. Yes, I know I was wrong, but I wanted proof that she'd been having an affair before I moved out. One of my best buddies from college is a divorce attorney, and when I asked him what I should do, he sent me the info for a key logger. I installed it on my wife's laptop and was prepared for the worst. Now, I feel like what I found is somehow worse than her cheating. I didn't find any steamy messages, but I found out that she keeps a diary in a Word document that she writes in every day. I know I should have just stopped once I knew she wasn't cheating, but once I saw my name in her diary, I couldn't stop. I read all of it. All 7 separate documents, going back to way before we'd even met. Turns out she's not cheating. She's depressed, hates herself, and has absolutely no trust in me. All of the stuff I've been confused and bothered by has some kind of sad, self-loathing explanation. She hates having blonde hair, but she writes, "I know he'd divorce me if I went back to being a brunette." Because wives are supposed to be blonde almost every week. The wives are supposed to be thing is tangled up in everything. She thinks wives are supposed to be quiet, which is why she doesn't talk to me anymore. She thinks wives are supposed to make things easier for their husbands, not harder. Which is why she didn't tell me when her grandfather died. It just goes on and on and on. She didn't tell me when she got a huge promotion and a raise because he'd leave me in a heartbeat if he knew I made more money than he does. Men can't handle that. It hurt to know that she thinks of me as some kind of one-dimensional 1950s husband. And I've been racking my brain to think of anything I could have done to make her think this way. What I can't handle is that she'd lied about the big stuff. I honestly don't know if I can forgive her for not telling me about the miscarriages. The spontaneous family trips were actually her miscarrying 2 of our children, one at 5 weeks, the other at about 10. She went and stayed with her parents while she was recuperating, and her brother and sister came to support her. But not me. I didn't get to be there for her, because she thinks I would leave her immediately if I knew that she'd killed our children. She's convinced that she caused both miscarriages because she smoked pot for a long time before we got married. For what it's worth, it sounds like her family tried both times to get her to tell me, but she wouldn't. She finally told me about this pregnancy because her parents threatened to tell me she didn't. I'm just absolutely confused. I don't even know what to think right now. I'm just so baffled because everything she says about me in her diary is insanely nice. She goes on for pages and pages about how much she loves me and how she thinks I'm her soulmate and how she would do anything for me. I just can't understand why she thinks that I would leave her. Knowing that she's spent the last 3 years walking on eggshells around me, convinced that I would leave her at the drop of a hat is just so confusing and awful. I feel like our marriage is some kind of lie. The woman I thought was self-confident and ready to take on the world is actually full of self-loathing and really, really depressed. I don't know her at all. She's been suffering silently with depression long before we met. She has no faith in me, no trust. She thinks that every hug and kiss I give her and every "I love you" I say is a lie. I just don't know what to do. She obviously needs serious help, but I don't know how to get it for her. I can't tell her that I read her diary. If she has zero trust in me now, I can't even imagine what she'd think if she knew if I read 6 years worth of her private thoughts. I feel like I need to get my in-laws on board somehow, but I don't know what to say to them. I know I can't ignore this, but I feel like any move is the wrong move. I own a small condo in Orlando. I bought it while working for the Mouse, and my friend Ben lived there with me. Ben's a cook and is rarely home. He has a large room that is accessible from outside and attached bathroom that locks to the rest of the house. Well, I got a different job, got engaged to my partner, and moved a few hours away. We kept the condo as a place to stay when we visit the parks. And we agreed with Ben that he could continue living there as long as he paid all the utilities and maintained the place. Our friends use it too, they pay a bit for utilities, are told don't bother Ben, and clean before they leave. Between everyone who uses it, we've gotten stuff donated so it's now a fully stocked vacation home. My immediate family and I have a bad history but we mended. They've used the condo 3//4x a year. On Monday Ben got woken up at 2 a.m. by hammering on the main door. My aunt and uncle, their kids, and their grandkids were all there waiting to be let in. I haven't spoken to these people in years after they decided I was the devil's spawn for being gay. They demanded that the caretaker give them the keys. Ben called me. I told him to give them my number, then shut and lock the door and not let them in. My aunt was insistent that my condo was actually owned by my family. It was the family vacation home. And it was against the law to not let them in. I told her no, it was mine, I own it and I let friends and family use it, but I choose who stays there. There was a lot of back and forth and some petty name calling. She said they were here for a week, where were they supposed to go, and I said I don't care. Meanwhile my partner reported that Ben texted them saying my uncle was attempting to kick in the door. I said tell him to call the police. She hung up on me and Ben said they left. In the morning I got a phone call from my mom trying to convince me to let them stay. We had an argument during which she admitted that she didn't tell people that I owned the property, because she didn't want the rest of our family to know they were in contact with me again. I told her if that's how she wants our relationship to be, then she's no longer welcome. I checked in with Ben and he's okay. Today my aunt sent several texts asking to stay at the house because they hadn't accounted having to pay for a hotel, and they had planned to just buy groceries and use the kitchen. I told her no. She said they were about to be out on the street with their luggage. She called me cruel and heartless and that I was ruining Disney for the kids. That made me hesitate, probably because I worked for the mouse. I know that particular family line has very little money. Yet I find it hard to believe someone would plan a whole vacation without accounting extra funds for it. But the kids are really young. I'm so furious over the homophobia that it feels like a point of pride to deny them access.